Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. Um, Today's video topic on detention and layover. Uh, I think I'd done a video about this way back when, but I felt like it was something that bared repeating, right? Or, as a reminder. I actually had gotten a call from one of my regular drivers. He runs a dedicated load for us, and as well as some like spot stuff, right? And he had called me yesterday because on this particular lane that we run, always got loaded pretty expeditiously, and as well as being offloaded in a very timely manner. However, as of late, the person who is in charge of offloading at this facility was promoted. Okay, they're now, I don't know, doing more administrative type tasks, I guess, or something. And so the new person kind of coming in, they've had some hiccups and some lengthy offloading times, right? And, even though he was checked in, then all of a sudden, another driver would show up after, and then, oh, well, we're going to move you and bring them in. And, it was just, it was getting to be a little bit chaotic, and he brought it to my attention, and we obviously addressed this. I wish he had brought it up to me when this all first started, but apparently after time and time again now, and I kind of hope that it's just a matter of this new person filling the role, kind of more or less sort of finding their feet, right, and just getting everything in order. But I did, as a result, pose the question in our Facebook group, right, for carriers. And this video is not just for carriers, it's for brokers as well, okay? Especially for you new brokers getting into the industry, as well as agents, okay? And so the question was, when do you consider detention to start, and do you notify the broker prior to detention starting? This is something that I have run into in the past. I'm sure that many of you have as well, as a broker or feeling the frustration as a carrier. First and foremost, you want, when you sign on with a broker, right, as a carrier, read the section in there in regards to layover and detention, right? Their accessorial pay. So, because oftentimes this is widely overlooked, and I don't understand why. And it would really end up saving everybody a lot of time, headache, frustration, just by taking a quick moment to look that over. Now, I have seen broker packets where there was no mention of detention or layover, and you are therefore basically at their mercy. Okay. And so then that's obviously up to you if you're going to put enough trust into that broker to pay you for detention and layover. And it's in my humble opinion, it's kind of a dirty practice not to have that in there. Because it's, usually the reason they don't put that in there is because they have no intention of paying that driver, right? They may collect the detention or layover from their customer, but oftentimes they're just not paying it, right? And that's in no way, shape, or form how you build relationships in this industry or any other industry, right? By being deceitful. So I really like the answers to this. First one is 2 hours after arrival, as long as you were not late for the appointment, okay? And notifying at least 30 minutes before starting detention. That's the general rule that they always go by, right? These are some of the answers. And someone else, basically, yep, this is it. Another comment was, if on time for the appointment, which they always are, 2 hours after appointment time, not arrival time. If open window 2 hours after they check in. Some loads have stated 3 hours before detention, but they won't book these unless the rates are higher, which means they typically don't book them. They notify the broker at least 30 minutes before detention. However, if there is an obvious major issue, they notify the broker as soon as they can that detention is likely. They've done it, with an hour and a half until detention started. Sometimes the broker will call over to the shipper and receiver to kind of, get things sped up. That's very true. That's something that I've done. They run drive-in and try to avoid detention by avoiding certain loads, food service loads, recycled cardboard, paper products, and construction job sites. Okay. Another answer was, depending on the firm you're working with, most firms are 2 hours free, then X amount of dollars, depending on vehicle class after. Then advise maybe 30 minutes before that you're getting close to detention time starting. Important, or at least a good idea, to always provide this info to the broker before you book a load. It might save you headache down the road. Most guys don't, but it's good habit to be in, since the broker may say, oh, we require 4 hours before detention, or instead of 150 you think you want, they may be offering only $45 an hour. And this is very true, and this sort of touched on my follow-up answer to the question, which I kind of had hoped somebody would have brought up. Another answer was, depends on what the rate confirmation says. Okay. Not all rate confirmations state the detention and layover. I've seen plenty that don't, some do. But again, reading that setup packet in regards to what their accessorial and detention policy is, again, like one person mentioned, they might require the first 3 or 4 hours free, right? And if you don't know this, right, because you didn't read that in the, in the section regarding detention and layover, you might be kind of SOL. Also, there's variance on when the broker states that they need to be notified prior to detention starting. Oh, I'm going to turn the ringer off on my phone here real quick because I don't want to get interrupted like I did the other day. So it's a good rule of thumb to always make sure, like I said, that you're reading that and notifying the broker at the appropriate time, at least, via email, text message, have a record of that phone call. That way they can't dispute it later on down the road. And even if you do call them and say, hey, I know you require a half an hour before, I'm calling 45 minutes or an hour prior, to let you know, I would also follow that up in a text or an email so that you have something in writing versus, they could say, oh, well, you just let me know that you checked in or something, right? Something else to bear in mind is writing down your in and out times. More times than not, this is not going to be acceptable. Oftentimes the shipper will dispute this. And what I mean by that is the driver can't say, well, I arrived at 10 o'clock, checked out at 2 p.m., right? You owe me 2 hours for detention. Well, how is that? How is there any way to validate that, right? And so then of course, and they won't even let the broker know until after the fact or when they're sending over their invoice, right? So these are all things, like I said, to keep in mind, to make sure that you're getting paid for detention, layover, etc. Also, not to get off track, but to make sure that you understand how much they're paying you for detention or layover. You can't renegotiate it after the fact, right? So yeah, very, very important to be aware of and, kind of pay attention to. And, sometimes I've seen carriers send over invoices with no in and out times. They just charging for detention on their invoice. And it's like, what? You number one, you didn't notify me as it's stated in our, in our setup. And number two, there's no ins and out times. I'm just blindly going to accept the fact that I somehow owe you detention for this X period of time, right? So, and of course, then there's a phone call, and then they immediately get upset because, oh, well, we were there from this time to that. Well, okay, and like what was mentioned earlier about, whether you're there for an appointment or whether it's first come, first served. Does it start from the time that you actually get a door, right? Or from the time that you check in? It's also good to be aware that not all shippers, right, or customers pay detention or layover. I've run into this before very early on when I first started, out as a broker. I had a customer, and I may have used this example in the past, but I had a customer that, we got to the receiver and they held the driver's truck for like 7 hours, right? He missed out on his next load as a result, and it was a very bad situation. I let the customer know, hey, this is happening. Oh, we don't pay detention or layover. And I don't know. I guess I had automatically assumed, right? That was one of my fails early on as a broker. None of us are perfect, right? I make mistakes even to this day. I, read an email too fast or a text and, forget to relay something, but it happens. It's extremely rare, but it can happen. But yeah. And so inevitably it was still our policy to pay the detention, right? And so, that all ended up coming out of my pocket as a result. And they understood, they knew what I was getting paid on the load. And he said, you've got to make money too. And I said, I understand that. I said, but our agreement was for us to pay you detention, right? And after a short exchange of, I don't want it coming out of your pocket, because we'd worked together previously, right? In order to keep that relationship, in no way, I don't believe it in any way, shape, or form compensated the driver enough, compared to what he lost out on, on that next load that he had planned on picking up. But it was better than a kick in the teeth, right? Yeah, I ended up paying him because that was, what we agreed to. That's part of our contract with them. So, just some things to keep in mind so that, you avoid, that headache, that frustration, and oftentimes, your factoring company sometimes will question that, and won't always go to bat for you depending upon who you're using. They'll verify with the broker, hey, is this correct? And the broker might say, no, and how would they, if you're not informing them and letting them know prior to, right? So I guess just kind of as a quick update to make sure that everybody is getting paid what they deserve, right? And, like I said, with that carrier that I use regularly on this lane, I really wish that, but we'd been working together for quite some time, but it was kind of getting to the point to where it was like, well, okay, I've got to call Tim and let him know about this, right? Because he understood a few hiccups, but it was starting to become a thing, right? So I believe we've got it all handled now, but yeah, I really, because there's no way to go back now, right? I mean, there's just not. I'll obviously try to come up with some way of taking care of him, as a result of this, but I don't know, I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'll do something. And so yeah, it's all about, maintaining your relationship with your carriers, right? And doing what's right, as well as for you carriers, maintaining those relationships with your broker, right? Because, your headache becomes their headache, and, now they've got to argue with their customer, well, the driver actually was there, and I've had shippers and receivers dispute times, even though they had the the driver actually had proof of check-in and check-out times from the shipper, right? And then the customer disputed it after the fact. I ended up having to eat on some of that. I think they did compensate us for like an hour, and I think it was like 3. So, I still had 2 more hours of detention that came out of, my pocket as a result. But, it's, and the other thing to be careful of too is to, once you find out where that load is going, do a quick Google search, right? This is something I haven't talked about for a little while, but it's very important whether you're seeking out new shippers, right? Before you call them, check that Google search or their Google listing, because drivers oftentimes will leave reviews, right? And you've got those little stars, where they're rated. And if you see a bad rating, and you start seeing, I'm not going to load here anymore. Every time it's, I had 11 a.m. pickup appointment. It's now 5 p.m. I still don't have a door. You start seeing comments like that are, especially if they're more recent. Yeah, I would avoid that like the plague, right? Because that's just going to be another headache, not only for myself, but for my carriers as well, right? And I think that some of these shippers need to be held accountable more than what they are, right? So just another tip, I guess you might call it, to avoid those places. And if you are a driver or carrier that you see that it's picking up at a certain location, do a quick Google search on them and see what those reviews are, before and do it immediately. Or you might even ask over the phone before you even accept the load, where's it going? Where's it picking up at? And so, by doing that, you can kind of get some pretty good insight as to what your wait times are going to be, right? And not always, but, like I said, if you start to see, pretty regular reviews of lengthy wait times and that type of a thing, like I said, avoid that like the plague. I mean, hiccups can happen anywhere, right? I've had forklift drivers knock over, basically like you've probably seen it on other YouTube or maybe on a Facebook reel or something where, a forklift driver hits a rack and it all just domino effects, right? And I've had to call a driver and say, yeah, we're not picking up that load today. What? Why? And then I had to explain what the situation, that they're cleaning up a huge mess, right? And there's no way that they're going to have that cleaned up in time to be able to load you, right? And so, and depending, then I end up, paying for truck order not used, right? Or TANU. So yeah, things can happen, but these are some good ways to avoid those problems and headaches that, could inevitably cost you, right, down the road as a result. Nobody wants to work for free. You shouldn't either. And so these are just some tips and some rules to hopefully kind of live by to help make sure that you're getting paid what you deserve. Okay. I hope everybody found this video helpful. Again, a big shout out to everyone who commented on the post in Facebook. You guys are awesome, right? I love the Facebook group. It's really evolved into something. I haven't bragged about it in a little while, but it's really kind of evolved beyond my wildest dreams, right? It does take up quite a bit of time and work. Sometimes we start, we get scammers in there and things. And sometimes they'll lie on their questionnaire to get in, and then weeding out all the spammy posts and pending posts and everything. And this is one reason why the group is private, not public, because I've seen some other public groups that maybe they started after our group, but it's full of just absolute trash, right? They're not moderated very well, if at all. While they might have high numbers, that's not the goal, right? The whole goal is for everybody to network and learn and grow together, right? As drivers, carriers, agents, brokers, shippers, receivers, like everybody, right? Everybody involved in the industry. So if you're not already a member, I encourage you to join. There is a link to it in the description down below if you'd like to. Just please make sure that you answer all the questions, because if you don't, bloop, I delete it, okay? Because I don't know who you are. It's just simple as that. So with that, I will go ahead and sign off. I hope everybody's having a great day. Looking forward to the weekend. And as always, be kind to one another.